The host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.
It's time for Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. Dr. Ricky Siegel is a certified sex therapist, educator, and supervisor, and his brother Larry Siegel is a clinical sexologist and certified sexuality educator. The Siegel Brothers are here to answer all your questions about sex and sexuality, but we're unsure who to ask, including questions you didn't even know you had. They will also welcome guests from around the globe to talk about a wide variety of topics and issues within the fascinating world of sexuality. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to Sex Talk.
Well, good evening, and welcome to Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. My name is Dr. Richard Siegel. I'm a certified sex therapist.
And I'm Larry Siegel, a clinical sexologist and certified sexuality educator.
And my super cool, awesome big brother.
Thank you. Still my favorite role.
And we are coming to you from
live
away from the studio, doing our part to maintain physical distancing in this age of a crazy new normal. The new normal is anything but normal. So we are on the radio here in South Florida every Friday night at 7 o'clock on 95.3 and 96.3 FM and 740 and 1470 AM.
Good.
We're live on Facebook if you are joining us there.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. Please hit the share and like buttons and let people know that it's time to talk about sex.
Yes, indeed. And no matter what's going on, it's always time to talk about sex.
Indeed. Just like sex therapists know most often maybe, it's actually sex that takes the hit for relationship problems.
That's right.
A lot of things that come in as sex problems are really not sex problems. They're relationship problems, but sex is the casualty. But when there's a bigger outer tragedy like this coronavirus pandemic, it puts a lot of things in a different perspective. For some people, I've heard some therapists say that patients are saying, well, all of a sudden, a little sex problem doesn't seem so important.
Well,
and maybe
sure.
Let's put off talking about that while we're all freaking out and hoarding toilet paper and baked beans.
Which, by the way, may be the best time to talk about some of those sex problems.
That's the point I was hoping we could make tonight.
Mm-hmm.
That, first of all, I think it's a sign in itself that people are freaking out about having to be sequestered with the people they love the most.
Right.
That in itself is a signal that maybe there's an opportunity that we should take advantage of there to really be creative with those relationships.
Absolutely.
Reframe them, get a perspective shift, maybe even change the relationship like they've never been before. Like, during immediate tragedies, if there's no power and everybody's cell phone dies, people actually have to talk to each other.
Right.
Or maybe play board games by candlelight, right? This, as we've been hearing, this slow motion tsunami is going to really give people more than a 3 or 4 day window to have to hunker down and not drive each other crazy and really, I love quoting Viktor Frankl, that definition of freedom as the ability to choose your mood despite your circumstances.
Yes, absolutely. And that's so worth repeating.
The
That's really worth
suck,
repeating.
and that's it for everybody. But the circumstances are going to suck whether we're miserable about it or whether we try and make the best of it.
That's exactly right.
And then Dr. Frankl came through the Holocaust.
Right. And this is where he developed a lot of these ways of thinking and survival, putting one foot in front of the other and just being where you are.
And being in the worst possible human conditions that spark of life and love and connection. Women that were emaciated, skeletal, starving to death, were getting pregnant.
Yeah.
And people were sneaking off and having secret weddings that they could be shot and killed for.
Yeah.
In those circumstances.
Right. Exactly.
So we're being told to stay home for a couple of months?
Yeah, it's a little perspective there as well. Absolutely. Right. But again, that point that certainly bears repeating, that we may not be able to control the situation, but we can control how we go through it. That's such a key thing. You can control your mood. You can control your mindset, even if you cannot control what's going on around you. I used to use, kind of a dumb analogy, but especially back in the day, and used to know a lot of surfers. A good surfer knows the difference between controlling the ride and trying to control the wave. Right? You can't control the wave, but you can control what you are doing on it, how you're riding that wave. And this is really, again, such a pivotal part to people's staying safe and sane through all of this.
Yeah. Yes. The last thing we need, and don't read all that crap online that just stokes panic and more of this. The last thing we need is an additional epidemic of OCD and germ phobia and neighbor phobia and agoraphobia and people freaking out. I still think it's the funniest meme I've seen through all of this about the toilet paper hoarding, because one person coughs and 10 people crap themselves. Mm-hmm. Right? That's not what we need, and that's not why we're doing this.
Right.
Exactly. Yes, it's a very, very serious thing. Yes, there's going to be a lot of illness and, as they say in the medical field, M&M, morbidity and mortality. Mm-hmm. But the average person, young, healthy people, really need to understand that they don't have to panic for their lives. They have to do their part to protect their grandparents, or the old lady next door, or people who are really vulnerable, the people who are dying from this. Yes, it's tragic and it's scary. Mm-hmm. The numbers are going up so fast every day. We should all stop watching the news.
Well, that's one of the things I highly recommend to people right now.
It's still the vast majority of the most serious impact of this is elderly people who are immunocompromised and dealing with chronic illness like emphysema and diabetes. And, dear old Dad and I had another talk today about he can't be casual about driving down to see if the dentist office might be open again.
Yeah.
Right? That he has to protect himself and we have to protect him.
Right. And, I also want to sort of expand this, because for a while, through especially the initial phases of all of this, that has been kind of the rhetoric, that the people at most risk are the elderly. But when we look at the vast majority of people who are getting infected and who are getting sick and who are even dying, it's actually between the ages of 20 and 40.
The majority, no.
Yeah.
I know there have been
people getting sick. A lot of the asymptomatic
people. The real
people.
scary thing is healthcare workers.
That's absolutely the frontline people who are there helping.
Doesn't matter how many ventilators there are if there's nobody well enough to operate them.
Right. That's exactly right. And unfortunately, we are seeing those numbers going up at a frightening rate.
Right.
More frightening than the rest of it. But again, all of this frightening stuff, and I apologize that I even characterized it that way, because I don't think we should be frightened. I think it's about establishing a new normal. We have to sort of rely on our own resilience, which we can trigger in a very simple way, right? We accept the situation we're in, and we make the accommodations necessary. This is what we are in right now. We are in an adjustment period. And like you said...
I said last week, we all qualify for diagnosis of adjustment disorder.
Right.
Some with anxiety, some with depressed mood, some of us with both. Mm-hmm. Right? We all have to adjust. But we can't emphasize enough the opportunities that there are for reconnecting with those closest to you. And for intimate partners, again, a lot of folks who were used to time apart, like being at work all day and away from their partner, now
that's such a big one.
24/7 cabin fever.
That's right.
It takes some creativity.
It really does.
To turn towards and not away, and not say, I can't even stand you breathing, get away from me. But how can we be more creative? Even like, I've encouraged more than a couple of couples in the past couple of weeks to sneak out. Remember, just the same way we used to sneak out from our parents, now we sneak out from our kids.
Especially if you have kids at home and you have a full house, so to speak.
Go for a drive. Make out in the back seat of the car.
That's it. Go in the driveway. Yeah. Down to you don't have to go far. See, that's the thing. We want to be creative, but the beautiful part about that is it doesn't have to be difficult. We don't really have to go so far out of our way. Right? You just have to be willing to think a little bit differently about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So one of the things that I think is very important about being in all of this and how people can make all of that happen is, even if you have a good relationship, even if your communication is really good, under normal circumstances, like you said, and we talked about last week, we're usually away from each other 8, 10, 12 hours a day. So that time we have to be good communicators and to have a good, smooth relationship is different now. So even under the best of circumstances, we have to set some boundaries.
Right.
Right? And that's really all we need to do.
Good rules of engagement.
Right.
And so much of therapy with couples is spent teaching folks how to fight fair,
Mm-hmm.
how to be assertive without being aggressive and saying things you don't mean and you can't take back and do damage to the relationship.
Right.
And the more anxiety and more stress, like a situation like this, the more couples and families need to, I always think of that scene in 300 where the Athenian army, when faced with the torrents of arrows, they would all cover the Spartans.
Right.
They'd
Get
all
together and
gather
put
up
their
their
shields
shields. So it was just like one big shield.
Mm-hmm.
That's what couples need to do against the stress and strain
Absolutely.
coming out instead of taking it out on each other. They need to be a united front, and that includes stress with the kids.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? A united
Absolutely.
front and protect each other and the whole family, if there's a family, from the stress of this outside world. Right? If the world is crazy, our world doesn't have to be. I always
right.
used to try and
That's right.
lane that.
Yep. And I think when it comes down to that, and it's hard not to get on each other's nerves when we are sort of, sequestered in close quarters, but it becomes really important that we don't take our own frustrations out on each other, which is easy to do because it's a convenience thing. You may not be angry at this person, but they're the one that's there. You can't really be angry at coronavirus, so you take it out on the person who's right there. So now more than ever, I think what couples often need to do is really, before you want to get into an argument, and even if you think there's an issue that comes up and you're justified in making this an argument or feeling like you deserve to attack it, ask yourself a very, very simple question. Is it worth it?
Right.
Is it worth it? What's more important right now? Proving yourself right or being successful? Making this work?
Having peace. Yeah. That's not therapy advice. That's dad advice.
Well, it's all of the above.
If you want to be right or you want to have peace.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So this is, again, part of this boundary and part of maybe looking at a little bit differently the way we look at our families, the way we look at our partners.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because truly, we are in this together, figuratively and literally.
Yeah.
This may be the same room for some of you. So we really have to strategize about how to make it through this, still getting along, still loving each other, without incident whenever possible.
And you know what else I wanted to talk about for those who are not partnered, or as I keep forgetting who that actress was, who declared herself, just to get the press off her back from constantly asking her why she was single, she declared herself self-partnered.
Right.
That, Pornhub has extended their offer that was made first to Italy.
Mm-hmm.
Now apparently it's to everyone. And, of course, the anti-porn army is already up in arms and predicting, oh, my God, this will cause another epidemic of sex addiction because people are holed up in their house and the porn will just pull them in that much more easily and readily.
Right.
That, come on, we just got to get past this idea that a loving, nurturing, sensual, sexual relationship with oneself is crucial for sexual health. And that's not just a masturbation innuendo. That's part of it. But, this idea that whether one is by themselves or with a partner, But this idea that having sex because there's nothing else to do, or you're bored, or it's just recreational, is a sign of addiction or disease, or there's something wrong with that.
Absolutely.
It's just crazy to me.
Well, and the whole, and you know,
You're having sex to change your mood. That's
why not? Anything. The entire addiction field, as far as I'm concerned, runs face first into the wall with that same message. If you're doing anything mood or mind altering for the purpose of self-soothing, of anxiety reduction.
Why does someone read a book?
Right.
Oh, you're addicted to reading because you're escaping your feeling.
Right.
What?
Right. And by the way, why are antidepressants and why is Vyvanse and why are all these other feel-good medications and medications to help stop the effect of certain chemicals? Why are you so selective with your drugs? I mean, talk about addict thinking.
Right.
You know, that's real addict thinking. So all of you people in the addiction field, why don't you get over that? All right? There's a reason that we do have these behaviors. Sex is the best self-soothing behavior there is, whether partnered or not.
And I just have to add, it's also a hell of a sleeping treatment. It's better than an Ambien.
Orgasm or Ambien, sure.
It's an antidepressant. It helps reduce pain thresholds. It's good for our immunity and will help us fight off viruses and bacteria that we don't want.
That's exactly right.
Right, the list goes on of mental health and medical health benefits of a good sex life, and a good sex life is not dependent on having a partner.
Nope, and it's not even dependent on having intercourse. Right. In fact, we can look at, if you look at the medical benefits, it's not about any particular behavior. It's really even like orgasm. When we look at the sort of anti-prostate cancer benefit that we can see among men, you know, men that regularly orgasm, you know, a few times a week from their 20s throughout their life have the low rates of prostate cancer. Right? So it doesn't matter what you're doing. It's about the pleasure. It's about the release. It is about using that sort of sexual energy,
which we're all wired
absolutely for, and it's using that for, I really do believe, its intended purpose. You know, you can't think this is accidental stuff. Reproduction and well-being.
Right.
And in fact, if you look through a lot of the neurochemical sexual pathways, I don't think it's an accident there that you're also going to find a lot of endogenous cannabinoid receptors that are connected to a lot of this functioning as well. So, you know, people need to get over.
In case anyone doesn't know what cannabinoid receptors are?
Basically pot receptors, right, that we have naturally. Right? The lovely irony of the biomedical entity that we are. Endo or natural, endogenous is the endo, natural cannabis, chemicals, natural cannabis receptors. And we've got many different kinds.
Just like natural opiate receptors.
That's right.
And natural dopamine stimulating chemicals.
Absolutely. And all of these things are involved in every one of our systems that help us maintain balance, equilibrium, well-being, function. Right? So, you know, I think that's another one of those sort of puritanical holdouts. And I'm sorry, most of you people in the addiction industry are just modern-day Puritans. You're pleasure-phobic, you're sex-phobic, you're erotophobic, and that hurts people. That doesn't help people. So we don't want to deny that incredible benefit that this kind of pleasure gives us and is intended to give us. Right? So,
you know, just slightly off topic but related, it's so common, and people feel so guilty for feeling horny and wanting to have sex after a funeral. And again, what could be more natural and a beautiful way to comfort? But people, oh my God, we're supposed to be mourning. This is terrible. I'm a horrible person. Why would I be feeling this?
Right. Now, generally don't propose that to the spouse of the person that just died. That may be bad timing. But, just in general, yeah, you're absolutely right. Right? Absolutely right.
Crisis it's okay.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And traumatic, even the slow kind of weird trauma that we're all collectively sharing. It's okay. It's a great way of coping.
Yes, it really is. And
it helps us be loving to each other non-sexually. We're more tolerant of our neighbors. And more willing to help. Yes. And overall well-being.
Mm-hmm.
That's, again, it's part of that frustration we're always talking about, that sexual health means such a narrow thing to people, and it sets them off and makes them want to fight.
Right.
Because they think it's sex ed and birth control and abortion. Sexual health is about well-being, feeling comfortable in our own skin,
mm-hmm.
and being able to love ourselves and another.
Right. What is one of the oldest things that we have said since the beginning of our careers? Sex is not something you do. Sex is something you are. It is the totality of who we are as male, female, and all other shades and points along that continuum as human beings. It is that core aspect of our humanity, and we cannot deny that. All right. So again, before we run out of time completely, I think we want to re-emphasize that aspect of staying home, right? Taking care of yourself. We can talk about getting enough sleep. We can talk about eating right, right? Because we know there's a tendency in being sequestered to just sort of fill up and gorge ourselves on junk
crap food and not bathe and not
exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So it really is an opportunity to try to maintain some routine, try to maintain structure in our lives. Mm-hmm. And our relationship should be a really big part of that. Ourselves should be a really big part of that. So use this time that we have, that we all do have. Unless you're a healthcare worker, then thank you for your service.
And you have no time.
That's right.
You have to find time for self-care.
Exactly.
If it's an hour or a half an hour, please don't burn out.
Right. Go to the bathroom for 10 minutes and close the door and sit quietly.
Healthcare workers are now like our 9/11 first responders. They're
mm-hmm.
our real heroes.
Yes, truly the frontline people. Right? But we need to use these opportunities to find ways to make things better, especially in our personal lives. When you are home with your partner, plan time, structure time where you can actually make it about you. Where this time, even if there are kids around, go into another room, go out in the backyard, or you go somewhere else just to have time to be together. Right? And then there's that whole series of games. I think you brought up that one game last time, too. You don't need to buy anything. Make up your own little games. Have a little list of things that you would love to do with your partner, and you just take turns. You can pull
things out of a hat.
Sure. Just come up with an idea. Today, you wake up and say, okay, I'm going to plan something for the day. And you know what? It almost doesn't really matter what it is, as long as it's not harmful and hurtful, but as long as it's a surprise. And if you can do that throughout the day, what a way to break up the day. Right? Both in terms of activities and in terms of energy.
And what an awesome aphrodisiac.
Absolutely.
Right? Percolating desire, telling your partner that they got something coming at the end of the day and they don't know what it is,
mm-hmm.
that percolates.
Yes. And by the way, that's called foreplay.
Yeah.
Right? So planning is often an important part of foreplay.
Texting, even in the best of circumstances. It can't emphasize enough the little gestures. Couples
absolutely
text each other during the day. Nobody is so busy, working so furiously that they can't text, thinking about you, missing you, can't wait to see you tonight.
Absolutely. And you know what? If you're also unpartnered and you're by yourself, that's another thing. I think we reminded people last time as well. It's worth reminding them again that those things that you use for text and Instagram, and some of you staying up all night watching stupid TikTok videos, you can actually talk to people on those devices.
Yes, they're telephones, too.
Yeah, so reach out to somebody.
These little computers we all walk around with. Yeah, they started out as telephones.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And they can still be used as telephones.
Yeah.
Right?
And you know what? I suggested this to someone this morning. We have to go. Even if you think it's a goofy idea, I like it. Go through your Facebook friends, find people that you're really not close. They're your Facebook friends, you know. Reach out and connect. And
There you go.
the music means our time is up for this week. We thank you for joining us, and we will be here from some location, not in the studio, next Friday and every Friday with
Undisclosed.
Sex Talk with the Siegel
Right.
Brothers.
So stay well, stay smart, and stay home.